In this video, we will dive into the movie Squid Game Season 3. We will discuss the storyline, summarize the plot, and explore the cast and characters. Additionally, we will cover the movie's production details and box office performance. Finally, we will provide reviews and share personal reaction. So, let's get started. The secret sauce of Netflix Squid Game is a crafty way. It balances the thriller of a binge-worthy streaming drama with the brutal agony and potent social commentary of John on Luck character, risking their lives in a potentially lucrative series of amped-up children's games. It's a tricky thing to navigate, the inherent tragedy of it all never depending our curiosity about how the arena will test its player next. My main questions going into the Maggie Head's third and final season: how will creator and writer Hwang Dong keep that security without making us numb to all the death and destruction or burying the messaging that made his show so resonant? The answer: by drawing home to the cruelties of the system with the same cinematic flair that made Scare Game a hit in the first place, albeit with the new glycemically executed gring-inducing choices. The premiere returned us to the arena blooded corridor immediately after the previous season's shootout between the rebelling player, led by battered surviving Gi-hun, Lee Jung-jae, and the pink jumpsuited guards. After seeing the game's frontman, Lee Byung-hun, ordered the death of his closest ally, Jung-bae, Lee Si-wan, Gi-hun becomes a visibly grief-stricken shell of his former, more determined self. Lee offers a convincingly chilling depiction of a once fairy caricature grappling with his failed mission to end the games for good. As Gi-hun becomes overtaken with guilt and quiet rage, he nails the complexities of a person, battling the forces aligned against him and, at times, losing. The momentary cracks in Ji-hoon's moral resolve are distressing but also surprising, grounding his way more relatable than a hero who unwaveringly commits to taking the high road. This is especially true when he learns of the host Kang Ha-neul cowardly decision to stay out of the fight against the guards after agreeing to secure more ammo, which arguably led to many unnecessary deaths, including Jung Bae's. Tensions between Ji-hoon and Jae-hoo develop into a heightened game of cat and mouse, pushing a cornered Jae how to shed the layer of personality that one position him as an affable background character. He is far more nuanced while on defense against Gi-hun, allowing Kang to step up and match Lee's angry with each ill-fated interaction. We see a real shift play out in what's arguably Squid Game's most harrowing game, which pits players against each other more overtly than ever before, with the player split into opposing teams. One group is tasked with killing the other in a high-stakes redemption of hide and seek, in comparison to more metaphorical games that came before it. This gets a little too literal, putting actual daggers in the player's hands. Part of the intrigue in past games was due to player making split-second decisions to save their hides. Here the choice is essentially stripped from them, but it still contains some of Square Game's hardships, heartbreaks, and lessons. Chief among these lessons: good intentions never guarantee a hero's ending, or that he'll remain good for long. It's reality that makes this particular chapter comparable to the gut punch of season 1's Giganbo. It's also where Park Sang-hoon, returning as the combat-trained trains player and fan favorite Hyun-joo, gets to flex some action, stock skill, and deliver solid physical and emotional blows. The game's biggest reveal, however, is that of the wealthy whips miscoding as Square Game guards Previously seen only briefly in season 1, the VIP increased involvement in the games makes them a prominent part of season 3. Their participation leads to one of the season's biggest weakness, not because their glyphulous crank up the brutality in any meaningful way, but because their cringe-inducing dialogue and almost cartoonishly violent line delivery clashes with their co-stars' sincerity. Beyond that, their insight, which mostly amount to recaps of what we just watched unfold, are almost entirely unnecessary and on a show that maintained a decent pace up to this point. The VIP's addition feels are not like filler. Its only saving grace is that it becomes a source of a pivotal development in the game when Jung-jae unexpectedly gives birth and a rich spectator watch to make the baby. Not so much a bundle of joy, but a bit of wild computer animation from which I can tell a new player, apart from giving certain player a renewed reason to survive and raising questions about how exactly a newborn can compete in this scare game. The baby is brilliant, devastating, show of the trauma handed down from parent to child, as her fate is left up to a solar system and disparate opponents, and brings a 21st century this god for children into alarming focus. This predictably culminates in an intense face-off between Ji-hun and the baby's father, the morally ambitious crypto bro Myung-gi. But that lack of surprise does not negate the final battle's absolutely breathtaking execution, concluding with cinematography that's both hunting and a testament to the level of craft that went into the scare game. Hwang's decision to not take the easy way out is admirable. A much cleaner, happier ending would not have been as effective instead. We are left with a final reminder that there are very new few fine winner in either the scare scam or its many everyday analogs. We are also left with a parting scene and A-list cameo because we can't forget just how big of a global phenomenon who we are leaving behind that could be interpreted as leaving the door open for future games. It's a daunting thought. Scare game is a cautionary tale that benefits from brevity rather than a multiverse of pointless spin-off and scare on its own. The ending for the illustrate a dangerous game with global impact, one that we can try to outlive but never fully escape. Squid Game is one of the most exciting series to hit Netflix in some time. It meshes up the carefree, idyllic days of childhood with the brutal realism of adulthood as it forces everyday people to compete in life over that matches in a bid to potentially wipe out their debts. Equally parts out wrenching and scary inducing is a white gunkle thriller drama and episodic psychological breakdown with a sickly pastel veneer. It's one of the most unique things you will watch this year and maybe ever. The two main talking points of the third and final season of Scare Game are both massive spoiler. This means that I won't be able to mention the final minutes of the whole thing, which contains a minute to WTF and genuinely surprising that I bet my editor a serious amount of money. She would not be able to guess what happens. She could not, thankfully, but such reckless gambling is the sort of behavior that would land me in scare game in the first place. So it just shows that nobody here has learned any lessons from it whatever. Nor should I talk about another key development. In this case, it becomes so central that it needs to be mentioned somehow. So, vaguely speaking, a new player is forced to enter the game without being capable of giving their consent and becomes the focus of the other later episodes. It is owed to critics' Squid Game for not being credible, given that it is a hit show about an underground tournament in which children's games are played until many or most of the participants die. But introducing this new player is completely out there, even by the standards of hide and seek. But with news, scare game is a bona fide phenomenon and a noticeable dip in the quality after seasons one has done little to dent viewer. The second season ended in a bloodbath or a bigger bloodbath than usual. But for the most part, it felt like a slow and messy build up to the big final. The third season, which wraps up the story, suggests that splitting it up was unnecessary, at least in terms of momentum. The two halves could have made a tried second season, but in his turn, outstate it remains loose around the edges. Season 3 picks up exactly where we left off. The revolution has been neutralized and 60 players have been left live to continue competing for the big plastic piggy full of blood money. Player 45 Gi-hun. Take the voting, the competition's commitment to the democratic process means that before every game, the surviving player must take a vote on whether to continue to fight of their lives and a bigger prize pot or whatever to walk away and split the spoil. The VIPs, those mega wealthy spectators who pay to watch the games while wearing badge-wild animal masks and who make it feel like a considerably inferior show whenever they appear. Frequently chip in with meta level commentary about what is unfolding. One of them declared that watching the player vote on whatever to go is more interesting than the games. Reader, it is not. Some people want to go home. Most people want to carry on playing. This debate has happened before and it happens again. It leaves insufficient room for the games themselves. I find myself desperate for them to get back to the business of ultra-violent chess play, urging them to find a way to make conquers. Let's say into some fighters showdown. They do not play conquers. There are three games left to play out, but none of them feel as well thought through as the first season's challenges. I suspect that is why it struggled to reach the height of that first season. The game now feels like an add-on to bigger story that surprised towards its ending. So that is a lot of time dedicated to the North Korean defector turned uncover God Kangno All Park and No Jones Ho, Hwan Island hopping search for his brother In Ho. As the frontman, In Ho is much the star of this final run as Gi-hun, and he offers a rare and much needed moment of subtlety. There is no excuse for time given to the VIPs who appear to be in different show to everyone else. If you can get on board with a new constant twist, and that is a big of within a final, two episodes have a nicely grand and operatic feel to them, and ultimately scare game does its job, but it leaves the impression too that it has become a more traditional action thriller than it once was. As to where it will go next, all bets off. Scare Game is on Netflix now. Scare Game, Netflix's most fast series of all time, has come to a devastating end. Helmet by creator, writer, director Hang Dong, the thriller follows Song Gi-hun, who won the game's season, and then come back to German season 2, with the hopes of infiltrating them from the inside out and dismantling them forever. Upon returning to the game island, Gi-hun naively assumed he had the upper hand, yet by the end of the second season, the former gambling addict realizes that in these particular tournaments the house always wins. The final season is still deeply disturbing and ultra-violent, but it's much more of continuation of the second season than a distinct entity. Still, season 3 puts a bow on this chapter of the phenomenon while paving the way of a new westernized beginning. The third season opener, Case and News, picks up right where season 2 ended, with the pink soldiers killing off the rebel player who aligned themselves with Gi-hun in an attempt to stop the games. However, these pink clothed fixers are not a typical soldier who have been carrying out a front mass bidding to further immerse themselves in the chores. The VIPs are outfitted in soldiers' garments, thrilled to be active passive participants in the games they have only watched from afar, while the majority of the rebel players are slaughtered on sight. Gi-hun is paired and placed back in the central common room. Amid the jaws, Pink Soldier, no evil, begins her plot to extract Park Gyung-seok, her former co-worker who only joined the games to pay for his young daughter's cancer treatment from the island. Despondent about the failed rebellion and emotionally tormented by all that he has experienced, Gi-hun is inconceivable, yet the games continue. There is a terrifying round of hide and seek, a horrific turn of jump rope, and finally a fight to the death in Sky Square Game. Gi-hun has seemingly given up. Detective Hwang Jun, who previously snuck into the games as a god, hoping to find his missing brother, Hwang In-ho Lee Byung-hun, continues to search for the island where the contests are held. Unfortunately, false leads and nefarious characters initially prevent him from finding any real evidence. Scare Game Season 3 is not as haunting and speculative as the first two seasons, mainly because of the repetitive structure of the games and the lack of new character. Still, there are certainly some compelling twists and that make the last six episodes of this intense saga worldwide. Some season 2 fan favorite die in the most crushing phase is the arrival of Kim Jong, his Yuri, newborn baby, at the end of episode 2. The steady nod that shifts the course of the final games and raises the stakes to a level that has not been seen previously. In deep mental turmoil because of the games, his inability to be the frontman, and his own personal failing, Gi-hun begins to view Johan, his child, as an opportunity for redemption. The infant's arrival awakens him from his torpor, and after promising John-hee his protection, he seems to come back to himself, reinvigorated with a new purpose. However, when the VIPs decide to use the baby as a pawn for their own culturality and amusement, a direct allegory for the relationship between the ultra-wealthy and the helpless in our present-day society. Gi-hun comes to realize that not only are the most innocent among us inherently vulnerable, greed and monstrosity are boundless, especially when $45.6 billion is on the line. Ultimately, Gi-hun does not survive this round of the game, with the baby's life in peril and without any rescues to destroy the frontman or stop the games. He chose to sacrifice himself so that the infant girl might have a chance to live. He ends his life in the final contest, Sky Scare Game, so that the baby is declared the winner. A testament to Jung-hee's outstanding performance throughout the series. Viewers see a man who has navigated the full spectrum of emotions and managed to hold into his humanity despite his circumstances. The world is cruel, unfair, and full of horrors, many of which will grow increasingly grotesque in our lifetime. This version of Scare Game has concluded it's far from over. In the series' final humans are. The frontman finds himself in Los Angeles, admiring a game of slap, which is also the entry point into the Scare Games. After admiring the recruiter, engaging in a vicious contest with an unhoused man, In-ho and the woman share a quiet smile, yet even amid this dark and twisted final scene, created Hwang has coughed a path forward. Individually, we don't have the power to fix everything, yet if we do our part in changing and affecting one thing, just like Gi-hun, Junho, and No Eol, it will add up to so much more. Ultimately, as Gi-hun says before he falls to his death, we are not horses, we are humans, and humans are. Scare Game Season 3 is now streaming on Netflix. Scare Game Season 3 delivers only last devastating blow and a shocking part forward TV review. Productions executive produced by Kim Ji-hun. Since debuting in 2021, Netflix's Scare Game has received unanimous praise for redefining the potential of streaming. The Netflix original series paved the way for general audiences to further endure themselves in the innovative and bold storytelling that foreign television has to offer. Lee Jung-jae, the accolade, has conveyed pure anguish, terror, and extreme pressure in his horribly courageous performance as Seong Gi-hun, famously known as Player 456. His role in the show's global success cannot be understood. However, Squid Game Season 3 finds our brave protagonist taking a bizarre, guilt-stricken backseat, somewhat muffling the exhilarating rush of what is supposed to be a grand final. Scare Game Season 2 concluded with participants dramatically divided between groups of best traders and a heart of various revolutionaries led by Seong Ki-hun and his band of merry men. Unbeknownst to them, player 001 Lee Byung-hun has been carrying out a devilishly orchestrated plan the whole time, slaughtering the rebellion from the inside before revealing his true nature as the game's villainous frontman. Attempt to dismantle such a destructive operations proved futile, with Seong Gi-hun's Ariel heroic mission to permanently end the games accumulating in a blood-soaked failure. While many fans admired the catastrophic ending of season 2, others rightfully raised questions regarding the final season direction. Scare Game Season 3 operates more like a part 2 to the second season rather than its own stand-alone narrative. Audiences reunite with the tracksuit joining player 456, who is now muted by the unforgiving experience of the previous season final. Amidst his failure and guilt, the predatory VIPs and aristocratic group of elites who thrives off getting front row seats to inhuman suffering demand their insatiable appetites be satisfied. Thus, the games must continue. Just like preceding season, Scare Game 3 continues to provide sickening twist to childhood favorite games, keeping Netflix subscribers glued to their TV screen. Lee Jung-jae's talents are best captured within the season's opening episodes, breaking new ground with a performance that relies on quite emotional mannerisms our dialogue. Seong-gi-hoon evolves after a shaken survivor into an animalistic hell-bent on revenge, as he places the blame on the cowardly betrayal of Gang Jae-no, also known as Player 388. Succumbing to fear during the rebellion, Player 388 failed to return with the necessary additional ammunition, instead choosing to hide at the base. Our multiple episodes and enthralling cat and mouse like jars unfold. Darkness overwhelms the once incorporeable spirit, marking the beginning of descent into total madness choreographed by the games. Scare Game has become famous for its everyone can die approach, often concluding in the utterly devastating death of fan favorite character. We died previously such a 10 series created writer director Hank Dong-hyuk somehow kicks it up a notch, reminding viewer that these games never lead to happy ending. Almost every episode of Scare Game Season 3, there were shockingly drastic changes to its supporting cast, attaching to vital tone to player count and pursue a relentless narrative momentum. As Lee Jung-jae takes an unwelcome backseat in the plot, the abundance of supporting character without purpose and the storytelling concern this invokes becomes overwhelmingly apparent with such a disposable supporting cast. A slightly rushed exhaust began, while some deaths are immediately predictable and handled or genuinely jaw dropping, displaying an emotional whiplash certain to break heart. At this plethora of lacking character is reduced. Seong Gi-hun thankfully makes his way back to the forefront. However, the protagonist's lack of dialogue continues until the very end of the season. This becomes somewhat tiresome, acting as self-imposed limitation of player 456, who now consequently lacks depth in his survival-driven rage. Netflix subscribers are left wondering why various subplots such as the Rogue Pink God storyline that spells overseas from season 2, receive so much screen time without providing them with anything to invest in. Rich levels of knowns are lost from past season, and the main story plays at a frustratingly similar note, having only 6 hours to judge multiple underlying subplot. Scare Game Season 3 struggle to spotlight its antagonist, the frontman, after the dramatic cliffhanger of season 2. You might suspect a final showdown between Gi-hun and the frontman, yet their interactions are viewfully limited given the circumstances. Previous time is once again wasted on the outside world, leading character to the revelations of deceit and horror that we have already known for hours. The frontman's brother, Hwang Jun, who apparently South Korea's worst detective, continues his insensately the search for the island, bearing no fruit until the penultimate episode, as if that was not enough. Scare Game Season 3 is also haunted by new uninteresting subplot. The VIP's current games at hand are introduced, gambling fabulous quantities of cash as they watch the harmonizations of constants into playthings, all from the comfort of the ivory tower. Adjoining combinations of unnatural dialogue and overacting this mainly English speaking character makes these scenes borderline unbearable to watch. The VIPs ultimately serve no purpose other than to remind you that Netflix American Scare Game spin-off series is looming on the horizon. For all its flaws, there is still notable praise to be rewarded. Despite its short 6 episode account, Scare Game maintains an addictive pace when focused on the games themselves. The transgender's constant, Cho Jung-soo Park Seung-hoon, Player 120, the older mothers Jang Ge-hamja, Kang A-sam, Player 149 and the pregnant player Triple Two. Kim Jong-ji, Jo Yori handled their promotion to the limelight with brilliant care. The trio displays an astounding warmth and chemistry that makes their personal stakes feel tangible, despite the impending doom they face. Although the games are more simplified this season, their use as a narrative tool to convey evolving emotions and total moral degradation is as marvelous as ever. The final season of Scare Game reminds us that villains are not exclusive to affluent VIPs or game masters, as the participants can be driven by repulsive greed, to so much the point that it's overcome their desire to leave the game with it intact. This is where Scare Game Season 3 is at its best, as there are very few other mainstream shows that are willing to depict this kind of heroic realism without any filter whatsoever. Scare Game Season 3 is an enjoyable conclusion, yet it often seems unaware of its purpose. The driving conflict between Seong Gi-hun and the frontman is given little room to breathe, as the titular games return as priority. This is not unwelcome but feels disappointingly safe for the final of an otherwise incredible show. Fans are going to begin to question if Netflix's cash cow has been completely milked, being largely purported up by the illustrations performance of the returning cast. Given the ongoing development of spin-off shows, the novelty of this unique concept may have already worn off. For the time being, Scare Games final seasons encourages enjoyment in all the right areas. Release date June 27, 2025. Created by Hang Dong-hyuk. Directed by Hwang Dong-hyuk. Written by Hang Dong-hyuk. Executive producers Kim Ji-hyun and Hwang Dong-hyuk. Main cast Lee Jung-jae, Lee Byung-hun. Wei Han-jun, I am Si-wan, Kang Ho. Composer Jung-jae-il. Produce company Saturn Pictures Inc. Episodes count 6 season 3. The fans of Netflix thriller scare games have been unanimously swabbing over the events of season 3 episode. Netflix dropped the entire Scare Game Season 3 on Friday, June 27, and has not taken long for subscribers to start being watching. Netizens quickly rushed to X, formerly known as Twitter, and have made it clear that the viewers have been nearly traumatized by the darkest ever season. Fans around the world were ready for some big twist from the series final of Netflix's smash hit dystopian thriller Scare Game, but arguably no one saw this surprise coming. In the final moments of the show's last episode, the Scare Game universe suddenly gets a whole lot more global. When the camera jumps to California to find the characters, played by none other than two-time Oscar-winning actress Kate Blanchett on the street of Los Angeles, recruiting potential American player to join what one must assume in the US version of the show's eponymous Dead Game. The third part of Scare Games picks up the storyline from the previous season, where player 456 goes into trouble after leading the rebel. Fans have now started sharing and updating about the heart-wrenching plot and death where they have claimed the Scare Game turned the notch toward the darker aspect. The users were thrilled to watch their favorite character on the screen, but equally dejected about the sacrifice by the player during the green jumps. Episode 2 of Scare Game was too much, should not have succeeded, as Lip someone wrote. A second agreed already two episode in on the new season of Scare Game and WTF episode 2 wrecked me. A fellow fan wrote Scare Game season 3 episode 2 just find me up as another commented on episode 2 and had 5 heart attacks already. Another users then added alongside a crying gif. The ending of episode 2 was something else. Another users mourned for their favorite character and said another user warned they said season 3 would be darker. But we did not expect this much blood. Are you ready for the heartbreak? One user declared, just finished the game. I can't with this king show. You will never catch me watching this heart wrenching shit ever again. A sixth user added to similar chain of emotions and stated, Scare game as she just gave me a new trauma. Another user claimed, second episode of Scare game does not exist to me. The third and final season of the industry defining scare game confidently delivers each new round of the deadly games with speculative brutal apalm that is attempt at world building are disappointingly charred and uneven. Some of Scare Game's most interesting dynamics from the first two seasons, the politics among the masked gods, the organ harvesting population, the relationship between frontman In Ho played by Lee Byung-hun and brother John Ho. He grew for Bruley Man led by John Ho trying to uncover and infiltrate the island hosting the game's sketch to frustratingly lackluster conclusions without enlarging the world beyond what we have already seen so far. A new season of any show should always aim to ask new questions. For Scare Game, there are plenty to choose from. What is the selection process like for gods? And how do they get promoted up the hierarchy into the triangles, sergeants, or eventually the scare leader? What are their inner politics like? What other things happen between Brother Inho and Junho before in joint games? If Junho's crew manages to infiltrate the island, will game see stop? How will what happen? Who are these English speaking? VIPs really? Have there been occasions in the past where the games were nearly publicly exposed? However, the third season's world building efforts remains frustratingly unimaginative for the most part. Although the season's final 10 minutes deliver some of its most glorious moments that take place outside the game, they are so intriguing that it makes you wonder why we don't just start there. The third season speaks of several threads from where the previous left off season 3, functions more as a second part to season 2 than a stand-alone season. Jun-hun and his crew remains adamant about finding the island, while loyal helper Ho Seok-jung claims a strike in one of the show more exciting. Since we're trying to uncover the boat captain's path, there is one Paul chain between North Korea, born God No Eol Park, Gyu-young, and another trooper, with the game's top-ranking god, getting pulled into the scuffles. Yet these admirers are unevenly fleshed out and don't enlarge the scare game's universe much. Scare game creator Hwang Dong Kyuk seems to be at his best when directing the action-filled contest, which features children's games like jump rope and hide and seek in the season. From the vertigo-inducing, towering game of jump rope to long shorts, John hide and seeks labyrinthine corridors of seemingly endless doors and rooms in arresting color. Hwang is a magician's of fear, suspense, and relief. In those of the game's battleground, the alchemy of circumstantial trust, forged and broken alliances, and flashes of humanity reminds viewer of all the elements that made Scare Game such a global hit when it first premiered in 2021. The very best part of Scare Game also grown into its biggest course. It is a show that just works so well with an ensemble cast beyond headliner Gi-hun, player 456, other characters like the cold, calculative Crypto Bro Myung-ki, Yim Si-wan, strong-willed and heavily pregnant Jun-him, eager but self-doubting Jae-ho Kang-ho Newell, former Maran Hyun-cho, unpredictable but captivating Nam-kyo, and utter Sun-jo and Yong-sik all pull their weight. Part of the third season's unstatedly, steps can be protoned on the basis that some of the characters that audiences are most invested in just die due to the nature of the show as a survival game. This is amplified particularly in the season, as more than three quarters of the player have already been ultimated. The spectral and extravaganza of scare game thrives on a cacophony of 456 disparate but complex humans decked out in their blocky green tracksuit, taking on their lives' biggest chance at redemption in the game arena. It is the brilliant clash of Glow's humor, personalities big and small, and a hundred different value system and has propelled much of this show's momentum. As a player are killed off, the Germotry empties out and the show needs to turn elsewhere to find its verve and momentum, while this presents an opportunity for the story to become more intimate, fleshing the remaining characters out with greater depth. Scare Game suddenly becomes uncharacteristically too limited to thread these writers. The third episode title, It's Not Your Fault, is the show's most affecting one, and perhaps its strongest. The boisterous arena of games gives away to sincere emotional exchange as the games claim their victim. Some of the surviving characters utter the phrase, It's my fault. In their despair, they grapple with an overbearing guilt that their personal survival has come at such great cost, and also blame their own missteps and shortcomings which brought them to the game in the first place. Yet aimed all the pain and hurt. The episode makes a way of for expressions of profound grace of for and wisdom. While Gi-hun has turned nearly mute, burning the unspeakable rage and guilt after an unsuccessful and expensive rebellion which we saw in season 2. It is in the episode that he speaks the most in trying to find connection and catharsis. One Segli character's muses to Ji-hun, no matter how you look at it, life just is unfair, bad people do bad things, but they blame other and go on to live in peace. Good people, on the other hand, beat themselves up about the smallest thing. Context in the show wider critics of unchecked capitalism and inequality. This episode brings the questions of guilt into sharp relief. As much as the game fashions its own heroes and losers, victors and victims, everyone who is participant here is ultimately casualty of society in the real world. Outside the games, Some are born into a poverty or into a broken family. Others cannot find help for their drug or gambling addiction. Some just never had the best cards to start life with, who is really at fault. While the third people flaws smoothly in plot and characters development, the same cannot be said for many other part of the season. Some of the season plot twists will also prove divisive among audiences. For example, a new player is unceremoniously introduced into the games without being able to give their consent or even participate in each round of voting. This introduces a remarkably new dynamic among the player. Although the player's participation may make for uncomfortable viewing at times, the show introduces gear in its final minutes when it picks up the pace dramatically. It also ends in a way that ends up many new directions for future scare games spin-off, which feels like an inevitability. At this point, with such a big prize to be won, it's hard to imagine Netflix staying away from one of its most lucrative series for long. Each scare game this season has featured a series of directly and often unpredictable games, but Season 3 further raises the bar with its similar but disturbing line of childhood classics. Scare Game Season 1 began on a strong note with its portrayal of Korean games like Red Light, Green Light, Dalgona, Drug or Afar, Marbles Glass, Stepping Stone, and Scare Game. While even the Season 1 had their own cultural charm, Season 2 attempted to appeal to wider audiences with games like Russian Roulette, Six Lizard, Mangle, and Light Out. Unlike its predecessors, Scare Game Season 3 does not feature any mini games and primarily focus on the main games from the central venue. Owing to its limited runtime, the final installment of the series is only able to accommodate three more games. However, all three are jam-packed, well-charmed, twisted, and charmed that keeps viewer white-knuckled as they unfold. Although all three games in Scare Game Season 3 seem relatively simple in rules, they are layered with brutal consequences and moral impiety. Rules before beginning the game. The player were divided into two teams using a gumball machine. The balls in the machine were equally divided into two colors. Each player had to turn the handle on the machine to extract a random ball, which determined the team they had to play for. The ones with the blue balls were the hiders on the game, while the one with the red were the trackers. Each hider also got a key, which would allow them to unlock doors in the game's arena. A hider's role was to make their way to the arena except to avoid getting killed by a Dragger. It is also later revealed that Hider have three types of key shapes: square, circle, and triangle. Each door in the arena can be opened only through one of the keys, while the exit door requires all three key shapes to be inserted simultaneously for it to unlock. Owing to this twist, some players end up collaborating with me another, while several others try to steal keys from their fellow player to even the playing field. The guards also give names to the taggers, who have to kill hiders before 30 minutes countdown hits zero. Each tagger has to kill at least one hider to be able to qualify for the next round. Some taggers only stick to the basic rules of killing one hider. However, they see the game as an opportunity to eliminate the competition and go on a murderous rampage. Before the game begins, players from each team are given the opportunity to switch places only if they can convince someone from the opposing team to take their place. The hider are given 2 minutes to hide in arena before the taggers enter to hunt them down. Rules. The rules of the jump rope games are fairly simple. All the remaining players in Scare Game find themselves in a new arena where the female young he doll holds one end of the rope while her robotic brother holds the other. Player are expected to walk across a narrow ramp while maintaining their balance and jumping every time the rope swings toward their feet. The rope too is more like a steel rod that gradually gains more speed with each rotation. If a player loses balance on the ramp or fails to jump on time, they will stumble into the deep pit below and die. The players are also expected to reach the other end of the ramp in a 20 minutes time frame to avoid elimination. Name Yu is the first player to walk down the ramp, but he fails to reach the other end. Gi-hun goes second and finishes the courses, which gives other player the confidence to complete the game. One player tries to cleverly hack the game by reaching the other and pushing off every other player who tries to cross the ramp. However, Gi-hun threatens to push him over if he does not let other player laterally. Rules. The final game's arena consists of three high-rising pillars, while the first pillar is square-shaped, the second and the third are triangle and circular, respectively. The remaining eight players are first sent to the top of the square pillar through an elevator and asked to eliminate one or more player. Only after at least one alive player has been pushed off the pillar can the remaining contestants move on to the triangle one. The same rule applies to the triangular pillar, where another player needs to be pushed off before the rest can move to the final level. The player also get across to a button on the ground, which they must press to begin the game. As soon as they press the button, in a 15 minutes countdown begins, showing the remaining amount of time they have to knock a player off the pillar. The first pillar also have a steel rod that Miyojiki weaponized to push Minso and protect himself. After Minso dead, Gi-hun finds himself cornered on a triangular pillar. However, he soon wields the knife at the front man and then given him turns him tries to his favor until only him, the baby and Myoji are left as the final survivor. In the game's final moment, Gi-hun's and Myoji's fight on the circular platform without pressing the start button. Myoji ultimately falls off, leaving Gi-hun and the baby as the only two survivors. The game ends with Gi-hun sacrificing himself to let the baby win. Scare Game Season 3 features a multitude of characters dead in its latest game, including some tragic losses as the final episodes unfold. The newest batch of episodes in the popular Netflix thriller opens right after the end of Scare Game Season 2, with Gi-hun's rebellion against the frontman having failed because of his inability to defeat him. The game are set to continue, providing even more dangers of its participations within the final games and the events surrounding them. Scare Game Season 3 sees plenty of character die, some of those that have been highly anticipated since Season 2, while other characters in Scare Game who die are beloved participants. This makes some deaths more tragic than others, within the deceased characters having their stories and in ways they range from satisfying to the upsetting. A less tragic death in Scare Game. Season 3 was the unnamed masked officer. He oversaw the guards in the game, serving as a right hand operator for the frontman. He also came into the conflict with the No Evil on numerous occasions, particularly because he keeps meddling in the secret organs harvesting operations happening on the island. After making threat to him to go Jong Seok of the island, she returned to ensure all his files as a player are deleted. As the masked officer is taking her to the physical file location, a fight breaks out. While it seems like no full might die, she ends up shooting him with a machine gun from the elevator. It's a satisfying way for the masked officer to go out, taking him by surprise and allowing No Eol to completely erase Jeong Seok's involvement in the games from the frontman's files. I Am Jeong Tate has been a constant supporter of continuing the games due to having racked up 10 billion won't be it debt. He swiftly becomes a core antagonist during Scare Game Season 3, gathering group of players to conspire against Gi-hun and John his baby in Sky Scare Game. However, in Season 3, Episode 5, he ends up getting pushed off the second platform during a scuffle between all the surviving players. given how far Jung-jae was willing to go to win, even killing a baby to ensure he would get an extra 700 million. Attempting to get his cross, Nam Gyus ended up getting tripped by the rope. Failing to his dad, given the danger he caused to many. His death was not particularly tragic. However, means so betraying him offer a silver of satisfaction to his demise, given how much he underestimated his fellow player. As revealed at the end of season 2, Captain Park was part of the front man's plan to keep the games a secret, specifically from his brother, Junho. However, in season 3, Woo Seok discovered the truth, warning Junho that his life in danger. After Park turns on the team, killing nearly everyone involved in the search, Junho is forced to kill him. Captain Park's death keeps the detective out of danger, but it has a silver of tragedy due it because of their friendship. Jun, who genuinely believed the fisherman was trying to help him discover the island where the games were being played, that betrayal made his death bitterest, since Jun Ho lost both a friend and an enemy at the same time. Sonio, who claimed to be the shame of the sea, met her, and during the first game in season 3, during hide and seek, she discovered an axis, eventually teaming up with Jong-jae to get out. However, he leaves her behind only for her to get stabbed to death by Minso, who is helicoptering because of the drugs in Chanu's necklace. While she always presented herself as better than other players, Sionio was secretly afraid of that. She spent most of her time trying to outrun it, even if it put others in harm's way. Her death was not too surprising given her character arc, but it was still somewhat sad to see her go out in such a gruesome way. After Thanos' death in Squid Game Season 2, Manso tried to pull himself away from Namkyu, who kept insisting they work together in the games. However, after stealing the drugs from the cross necklace, he became more daring through ragged with guilt over not saving Simi. He ends up getting pushed off the first platform in Sky Scare game after a series of hallucinations featuring Jonas and Namgyu. Although he was responsible for multiple deaths, means so corrupted innocence was the core element of his character. He was not as those around him, clearly not built for the games. His death being turned into his guilt over others' death was a perfect stand-off, even if it was a heartbreaking demise. From the moment Gi-hun set his sight on die, hope for leaving everyone to die at the end of season 2, it became apparent that he was going to die. Despite initially being unable to kill him, Gi-hun was eventually forced to fire him after he managed to get a blood during hide and seek. Their cat and mouse chase lasted most of the episode with their final fight happening just before the game ended. Kill off led to important development for Gi-hun, but it was also difficult to see him meet such a fate. Instead of using art blood, Ji-hun strangled Jae-hun to death, using his anger from Jang-bae's death to kill his former ally. Dai, whose well-meaning nature made his death hard to watch, especially given how close he and the main character had been. Killing him off led to important development for Gi-hun, but it was also difficult to see him meet such a fate. During Sky Square Game, Myung-ji and Gi-hun were the final constants left alive, alongside Ji-hun's baby. While on the final platform, the pair fought after Gi-hun realizes the opponent might have blown the baby off the platform in order to make it out alive. This is made even more tragic because the child was his own, but it does not stop the protagonist from fighting back against him. In the end, Myung-ji fell to his death before being able to press the button to start the final round, despite all the good or tried to do, promising to protect Ji-hun. His actions never fully reflected what he said he wanted to do. Whether he was actually trying to protect the baby from Gi-hun and sacrifice himself remains unclear. But that layer of uncertainty is also what makes his death all the more tragic. Young Sik's death was telegraphed early into hide and seek. When it became clear he did not have the stomach to kill anybody. This led to desperate last-minute attempt to kill Joon Hee, despite her just having given birth to a child. In the end, his own mother, Gyomja, stabs him in the back to prevent him from killing the young woman. He is later shot by guards as the game ends. The most tragic element to Young Sik's death is that Gyomaja was in the games to help pay off his debt with her son dead. It gave her no tangible purpose to continue participating. The game also transformed him into someone he wasn't at the last minute. His desperation to survive making him almost murder Junhee in the process. Jeongja died not long after Yang-sik, but not before imparting crucial advice to Gi-hun. The night after the hide-and-seek game, she tells him how much faith she has in him, while also asking him to protect Jin-hun and her child. The finality of her second scene is confirmed when, the next morning, guards came in with a box, revealing she had hanged herself overnight. Her death is another fierce blow, especially because of how quickly it happens after the shattering of death in the hide and seek game. She would only go into the games to save her son, but instead had been forced to kill him. Even though her ending is sad, it still inspired Gi-hun enough to take up the mission. She would task him with protecting June, his baby. It's also worth mentioning that, unlike season 1, and the frontman had time to actually bond with Gi-hun during season 2, even if his intentions were sinister. While he intended to mess with the protagonist's goals to end the games, Byung-hun previously mentioned that the frontman at time was rooting for Gi-hun. Byung-hun also spoke about the challenges of portraying three different versions of his character: the frontman, Young-il, and In-ho. The character acts may indicate that In-ho was the one who made this kind of gesture at the end, since he was described as caring and empathetic by his brother and stepmother, while the frontman performed this human act as a gesture to Gi-hun in recognition of his sacrifice. There are still plenty of unanswered questions about him. In particular, is uncertain what his future holds, as the location of the games were destroyed and whether he still retained the title of frontman. While season 3 could not dedicate as much time to exploring these motives, he remains one of the most compelling characters in the series. The creator and the star have previously teased a potential scare game spin-off about the frontman. So hopefully that is one kind of idea that can take off, as it may not be the end of him yet. Scare Game star Lee Byung-hun, who plays the frontman in Ho, addresses why he overseas decided to save one new season 3 characters. The Netflix hit series finally returns with its final episodes, with the masked antagonist finally going back to his duties as the game's overseas. While the frontman has been challenging Gi-hun, Lee Jung-jae ideology of humanity, the main protagonist and former winner ultimately made the sacrifice at the end of Scare Game Season 3. However, the series' final moments, the frontman decided to save John Hay. While speaking with Netflix Studio, Byung-hun explained why the frontman saved the baby, saying that there will still signs of his last pieces of humanity still remaining within him. Unlike Gi-hun, who dies and persists on the island where the games take place, the frontman was one of the few Squid Game characters to survive to end. However, in contrast to his menacing act and heartless belief, while the frontman could have left June his baby behind, he ultimately decided to. It seems that Gi-hun's selfless actions not only proved the frontman wrong but also encouraged him to save the baby and send his share of the winning prize to his daughter. Even the frontman was close to destroying Gi-hun. The protagonist's sacrifice may have been the turning point in which he earned the respect of the game's overseer. That's considering that the frontman himself was once a former constant who entered the games in an attempt to save his wife and unborn child. It seems that Gi-hun's selfless actions not only proved to be the frontman wrong, but also encouraged him to save the baby and send his share of winning prize to his daughter. It emphasizes that the villain does not see Gi-hun as trash and earn his respect to at least conduct these humans act. It's also worth mentioning that, unlike season 1, the frontman had time to actually bond with Gi-hun during season 2, even if his attention was sinister, or while he intended to mess with the protagonist's goal to end the games. Buying Hall previously mentioned that the frontman at times was rooting for Gi-hun, which further emphasizes his admiration for him. Byung-hun also spoke about the challenges of portraying three different versions of his character: the frontman, Yong-il, and In-ho. The character acts may indicate that In-ho was the one who made this kind of gestures at the end since he was described as caring and empathetic by his brother and stepmother. While the front man performed, these humans act as a gesture to Gi-hun, and in recognition of his sacrifice. There are still plenty of unanswered questions about him. In particular, it's uncertain what his future holds, as the location of the games was destroyed, and whether he still retains the title of frontman. While season 3 could not dedicate as much time to exploring his motives, he remains one of the most compelling characters in the series. The character, creator, and the star have previously teased on a potential Squid Game spin off about a frontman, so hopefully that is one kind of idea that can take off, as it may not be the end of him yet. Scare Game Season 3 is here, and the reactions are perhaps not entirely what Netflix was hoping for. After the fails a spring and attempt to shut down the games in Scare Game Season 2 ending, Scare Game Season 3 picks up with a deadly illiteracies of hide and seek. The protagonist Gi-hun, Lee Jung-jae, is completely devastated by how things have turned out. Gi-hun has seemingly started to accept the frontman Lee Byung-hun worldwide, but he soon finds something. However, audiences are now criticizing elements of the final season, ranging from Ji-hoon's death to other characters' tragic fates to the implication that the games will continue in America, established through Kate Blanchett's Scare Game cameo. Some viewers, such as, are at least glad that they are not the only one who took issue with the ending, indicating that there are some problems with it many people can perceive. Others point out the futility of the show concluding with Gi-hun's death, when all he wanted was to stop the games. People are generally mad about their favorite scare game character's death, particularly that of Hyun-jo. Park Sang-hoon, the show's only major character, but laments the death of the Light Knight and mutually protective trio of Hyun-jo and Game. However, highlight the horror of this death, underscore the show's theme of the cruel system of the games, where the rich exploit the poor. Getting mad may be natural, but it is somewhat inevitable in the series. Myung-ji is as a strong contender for the most hated character of season 3, which can relate to, but also praise the actor, who delivered in a story about how someone who thinks they mean well is entirely corrupted by the game. On the other hand, some people see Scare Game final scene with Cat Blanchard not as a clever illustration of how the games recover but as a cash grab for an American scare game. Overall, reviews like Ford Snap expected a no hope ending. The slight disconnect between different themes of the show is what is promoting them to call this one of the worst ending ever. Scare Game Season 3 Rotten Tomatoes score also indicate that it is struggling to live up to the first two outing. Scare Game Season 2 and 3 were headed toward stronger fan reaction to character death, when viewers had more time to get emotionally attached to this batch of character. However, people's complaints about Scare Game Season 3 go beyond being upset about character, which are immediately a thematic cornerstone of the show. When the show ends so hopelessly, and the games will go on, seemingly to justify the advent of David Fincher's English language scare game series, people will question what the point of it all was. However, this is far from the worst final season we have ever seen, or the biggest fallout to a disappointing final. Scare Games last season largely kept the action and stakes ramped up until the end, and even some lackluster final plot points are devastating enough to undo the impact this series has had no Netflix. It is possible to argue that the death of Gi-hun and all the other players were necessary for the story. However, it does run the risk of feeling like a repeat of Scare Game Season 1 with only one survivor of the games. Again, this scenario hurts fans more the second time around because they had 6 months in between seasons of hoping and some of their favorite could still pull through. Additionally, when Scare Game does not really say whatever there is ever any hope in fighting a system like this, I see why people are upset. There are some series that work so well as one and don'ts that it's hard to imagine what could possibly be gained creativity from pressing onward with a second season. Sometimes those seemingly unnecessary renewal nevertheless yield pleasant surprises. Barry got only darker and wider as it went on. Other times, however, that initial skepticism proved justified. The second round of Netflix South Korean sleeper hit scare game was a turning step down from the first, rehashing most of the same themes and story beats at a slower pace with fewer insight. But it also delivered only half a season worth of plot, planting bombs to be detoned later and then cutting off just as things got truly intense. A reasonable person might have hoped a third season could provide enough payoff to make at least some of these stumbles are worldwide. Alas, it brings me no player to report that the third and thankfully last of Scare Game season only confirmed that we like Gi-hun should have left that cursed island behind for good after his first victory. Season 3 picks up in immediate aftermath of Season 2 as the last few rebels from Jaehan's violence uprising are put down and their bodies cleaned up. Gi-hun himself is not among the dead. That fact gives him to relief. The man who returned to the drums is one so flattered by grief and guilt that he snaps to life only to scream at the guard to just kill him already. They don't, of course, nor are the surviving contestants moved to reconsider his earlier place to choose to quit, so the game and scare game proceed as casual, hurtling, constant, two deadly high stakes versions of hide and seek, jump rope, and something our recognized organization team, Sky Shield Game, which is essentially a showing match atop dazzlingly high columns. But the thrill is gone, even if the VIPs just they are back and they are bizarrely stilled line readings along with them try to convince us otherwise. The watching is more exciting than the actual games once one declare, as if responding to viewer complaints that the watching took up too much time in season 2. This just keeps getting more and more interesting. Another announcement late in this season, like we might start to believe them if they just say it loudly enough. It does not work while creator Hang Dong still has a few more nasty tricks up his sleeve, including one final twist out of Neve so cruel. I gasped when I realized that was happening. Its latest run is too short on surprises and emotions and too long on mystery and well earned. Its main thematic target is once again the unjustness of our modern capitalistic system. This time with a specific and sometimes devastatingly short eye toward how the pretense of democracy can pepper our unspeakable cruelty. In accordance with your free and democratic vote, the next game will resume tomorrow. The participants are informed after each vote to keep playing as if there could be anything free about such a choice being made in system rigged by distant elite and enforced by faceless dogs. In one of the season's most darkly hilarious moments, a player apologetically informs another that the other have voted to sacrifice him. Please forgive me, but we are going to need you to die. He pleads, invoking majority rule in futile attempt to erase his own complicity and remains desire to live. But season 3 is an awfully long way to go for those occasional bites of wisdom, and a largely unpleasant one besides. Squid Game has never been a nice show by any standard. Early on, however, its grimness was tempered by a deep empathy for the people trapped in this mess and the occasional flicker of hope that compensation and connections might arrive even under the hardship of climax. Part of what made that initial outing so fascinatingly queasy was the tensions between how and we felt for the characters suffering and how entertaining it was to watch. Now, it's gloom and doom all the way down. The show is still great all at coming up with new and creative ways to torture its characters. One twist involving a baby is an viscerally upsetting as seems logistically impossible, but let's not adding into their humanity and without mystery of mystery stack. If the new player introduced in season 2 felt disappointingly in, season 3 makes no attempt to flush them out any further. It's the maculations that limits our investment not just in clearly obvious fingers like sadistic Nam Gyu or greedy Jung-jae, but also in sympathetic soul like trans soldier. Aside from Gi-hun, now a strong silent trap with no remaining trace of his gold or graciousness, the one thing all of them have in common is that they seem more like pieces being pushed human being with agency and interiority. If in lieu of characters and relationship work, Scare Game Season 3 offers hopes and keeps a plot, but while there are a few bright spots, chief among them the bite of levity. Scare Game, Netflix's most watched series of all time, has come to a devastating end. Helmed by creator, writer, director Hwang Dong-hyuk, the thriller follows Seong Gi-hun, who won the games in season 1 and then came back to them in season 2 with the hopes of infiltrating them from the inside out and demonstrating them forever. Upon returning to the game island, Gi-hun naively assumed he had upper hand. Yet, by the end of the second season, the former gambling addict realizes that in these particular tournaments, the house always wins. The final season is still deeply disturbing, more of a continuation of the second season than distinct entirety. Still, season 3 puts a bow on this chapter of the phenomenon while paving the way for a new, westernized beginning. The third season opener, Keys and Eves, picks up right where season 2 ended, with the pink soldiers killing off the rebel player whole island themselves with Ji-hun in an attempt to stop the games. However, these pink clotted fixers are not being carried to further. However, these pink cloth fix are not the typical soldier who have been carrying on the front man's building to further immerse themselves in the chores. The VIPs are outfitted in soldiers' garments, thrilled to be active participants in these camps they have only watched from afar, while the majority of the rebel players are slaughtered on sight. Gi-hun is spared and placed back in a central common room. Amid the chores, Pink Soldier, No Eol, Park Gyung, begins her plot to extract Park Gyung, Seok Lee Jin-wook, her former co-worker, and who only joined the games to pay for his young daughter's cancer treatment from the island. Despondent about the failed rebellions and emotionally tormented by all that he has experienced, Gi-hun is insoluble, yet the games continue. There is terrifying round of hide and seek, a horrific turn of jump rope, and finally a fight to the death in Sky Squid Game. Gi-hun has seemingly given up. Detective Hwang-jo, Vi Ha-jun, who previously snuck into the games as a god, hoping to find his missing brother, Hwang-in-ho, Lee Byung-hun, continues to search for the island where the contests are held. Unfortunately, false leads and nefarious characters initially prevent him from finding any real evidence. Squid Game Season 3 is not as haunting and spectacular as the first two seasons, mainly because of the repetitive structure of the games and the lack of new character. Still, there are certainly some compelling twists that make the last six episodes of this intense saga worldwide. Some season 2 fans' favorite dive in the most crushing ways is the arrival of Kim Jong, his Joey newborn baby, at the end of episode 2. The scary night that shifts the course of the final games and raises the stakes to a level that has not been seen previously. In deep mental turmoil because of the games, his inability to be the frontman and his own personal feelings. Gi-hun begins to view John, his child, as an opportunity for a redemption. The infant's arrival awakens him from his torpor, and after promising June his protection, he seems to come back to himself. Reinvigorated with a new purpose, however, when the YAP decide to use the baby as a pawn for their own cruelty and amusement are direct legendary for the relationship between the ultra wealthy and the helpless in our present day society. Gi-hun comes to realize that not only are the most innocent among us inherently vulnerable, greed and monstrosity are boundless, especially when 45.6 billion is on the line. Ultimately, Gi-hun does not survive this round of the games, with the baby's life in peril and without any rescue to destroy the front of man or stop the games. He chooses to sacrifice himself so that the infant girl might have a chance to live. He ends his life in the final contest, Sky Scare Game, so that the baby is declared the winner. A testament to Jung-jae's outstanding performance throughout the series. Viewers see a man who has navigated the full spectrum of emotions and manages to hold onto his humanity. Despite his circumstances, the world is cruel, unfair, and full of horror, many of which will grow increasingly God secure in our lifetime. This version of Scare Game has concluded. It's far from over. In the frontman finds himself in Los Angeles admiring a game of slap, which is also the entry point into the Scare Games. After admiring the required cat Blanchard, engaging in a vicious content with an unhoused man, in Ho and the woman share a quiet smile, yet even amid this dark and twisted final sense, creator Hwang has offered a path forward. Individually, we don't have the power to fix everything, yet if we do our part in changing and affecting one thing, just like Gi-hun, Jonho, and No Eol, it will add up to so much more. Ultimately, as Gi-hun says before he falls to his death, we were not horses, we are human, and humans are Scare Game Season 3 is now streaming on Netflix. Scare Game Season 3 delivers a one last devastating blow and a shocking part forward. TV review. Productions executives produced by Kim Jae-yoon, Hwang Jong-joo, Han Young-seok, and Kim Ji-yoo with Saturn Pictures Inc. Lee Jung-jae Byung. Since 2000, debuting in 2021, Netflix Square Game has received unanimous praise for redefining the potential of streaming. The Netflix original series paved the way of general audiences to further indulge themselves in the inventive and bold storytelling that foreign television has to offer. Lee Jung-jae, the anchor, has conveyed pure English, terror, and extreme pressure in his heroically courageous performance as Seong Gi-hun, famously known as Player 456. His role in the show's global success cannot be understood. However, Squid Game Season 3 finds our have brave protagonist taking a bizarre, guilt-stricken backseat, somewhat muffling the accelerating rush of what is supposed to be a grand final. Squid Game Season 2 concluded with participants dramatically divided between groups of bystanders and a horde of warriors revolutionists led by Seong Gi-hun and his band of merry men. Unbeknownst to them, player 001 Lee Byung-hun has been carrying out a diversely planned the whole time, slaughtering the rebellion from the inside before revealing its true nature as the game's villainous frontman. Attempt to dismantle such a dissuasive operation proved futile, with Seong-gi-hun's audaciously heroic mission to permanently anti-game accumulating in a blood-soaked fella. While many fans admire the catastrophic ending of season 2, others rightfully raised questions regarding the final season's direction. Scare Game Season 3 operated more like a part 2 to the second season, rather than its own stand-alone narrative. Audiences reunite with the tracksuit joining player 456, who is now muted by the unforgiving experience of the previous season final. Amidst his valor and guilt, the predatory VIPs and aristocratic group of elites who thieves of getting front new seeds to inhuman suffering. Demand unstable, appetites be satisfied. Thus, the games must continue. Just like preceding season, Scare Game 3 continues to provide clicking twists to childhood favorite games, keeping Netflix subscribers glued to their TV screen. Lee Jung-jae's talents are best captured within the season's opening episodes, breaking new ground with a performance that relies on quite emotional mannerism over dialogue. Seong Gi-hun evolves from a shaken survivor savior into an animalistic hell bent on revenge, as he places the blame on the cowardly battle of King Dae-ho, also known as Player 388, succumbing to fear during the rebellion. Player 388 failed to return with his necessary additional ammunition, instead choosing to hide at the base. Our multiple episodes, an enthralling cat and mouse like chase unfold. Darkness overwhelms the once incredible spirit, making the beginning of descent into total madness choreographed by the games. Skill Game has become famous for its everyone can die approach after including in the utterly devastating deaths for of a fan favorite character. Willie died previously, served to 10 series creative writer. Director Hwang Dong-hyuk somehow kicks it up notch, reminding viewers that these games never led to happy ending. Almost every episode of Scare Game Season 3 delivers shockingly drastic changes to its supporting cast, reaching to whittle down the player count and pursue a relentless narrative momentum. As Lee Jung-jae takes an unwelcome backseat in the plot, the abandoned sporting character, without purpose and storytelling concern this invokes, becomes overwhelmingly apparent. With such a responsible sporting cast, a slightly rushed exodus begins. While some deaths are admittedly predictable, a handful are genuinely jaw-dropping, dispensing an emotional whisper certain to break heart. As his plethora of flaking character is reduced, Seong Gi-hun thankfully makes his way back to the forefront. However, the protagonist's lack of dialogue continues until the very end of the season. This becomes somewhat tourism, acting as a self-imposed limitation for player 456, who now consequently lacks depth in his survival-driven rage. Netflix subscribers are left wondering why various subplots, such as the Rogue Pink God storyline that spells over from season 2, receive so much screen time without providing them with anything to invest in. Rich levels of notes are lost from past season, and the main story plays at a freestandingly similar note. having only 6 hours to juggle multiple hard-lying subplots. Scare Game Season 3 struggles to spotlight its antagonist, the frontman after the dramatic cliffhanger of Season 2. You might suspect a final showdown between Seong-gi and the frontman, yet their interactions are woefully limited given the circumstances. Precious time is once again wasted on the outside world, leading character to revelations of deceit and horror that we have already known for hours. The frontman's brother, Hwang Jun, who apparently South Korean's worst detective, continues his insanity dull search for the island, bearing no fruit until the penultimate episode, as if that was not enough. Scare Game Season 3 is also haunted by new, uninteresting subplot. The VIPs of the current games at hand are introduced, gambling fabulous quantities of sarcasm as they watch the dehumanization of Constantines into plating, all from the comfort of their ivory tower. A jeering combination of unnatural dialogue and overacting with these manly English speaking characters makes this sense borderline unbearable to watch. The VIP's ultimate serve to purpose other than to remind you that Netflix American Scare Game spin-off series is looming on the horizon. For all its flaws, there is still notable praise to be rewarded. Despite its short 6 episode count, Scare Game maintains an addictive pace when focused on the games themselves. The transgender constant Chu Jung Aika player 120, the older mother Jang Kyung player 149, and the pregnant player 222 Kim Jun Hee handled their promotion to be limelight with brilliant care. The trio displays an astounding warmth and chemistry that makes their personal stakes feels tangible, despite the impending doom they face. Although the games are more simplified this season, their use as a narrative tool to convey evolving emotions and total moral degradation is as more various as ever. The final season of Scare Game reminds us that villains are not exclusive to influence VIPs or Game Master, as their participations can be driven by repulsive greed, too. So much to the point that it overcomes their desire to leave the game with their lives intact. This is where Scare Game Season 3 is at its best, as there are very few other mainstream shows that are willing to depict this kind of harrowing realism without any filter whatsoever. Scare Game Season 3 is an enjoyable conclusion, yet it often seems unaware of its purpose. The driving conflict between Seong-gi, Hon and the frontman is given little room to breathe, as the titular games return as priority. This is not unwelcome but feels disappointingly, save for the final of an otherwise incredible show. Fans are going to begin to question if Netflix cash cow has been completely milked, being largely propped up by the illustrious performance of the returning cast. Given the ongoing development of spin-off show, the novelty of this unique concept may have already worn off. For the time being top, Scare Games final season encourages enjoyment in all the right areas. Ignore all the core and that, and Scare Game might as well have been a show for children. Its character face off in playground pastime. Its production design evokes juvenile location and its constituting relies on a cheery, bold palette, but in Netflix drama most cartoonish creation may be the VIPs, the group of animal mask wearing exceedingly wealthy antagonists who helped create a central tournament in which average people drowning in debt compete to the debt of a massive cash prize. The VIP's introductions in season I was met with decision from some viewer. They were cookie cutter villains with simplistic motivations and tiny written, poorly delivered dialogue. The VIP's popularity has not stopped Scare Game from beginning to back for its third and final season. However, this time around, they entered the fray by posting as God, shooting for survivors of own game and revealing in their despair later in the comfort of their spectating room. The VIPs provides bately yet listless commentary. When one of them sees a player relentlessly murder another, he praised the twist by bluntly intoning, "This just keeps getting more and more interesting." In some respect, Scare Game certainly has become more interesting in season 3. The player must endure an even deadlier set of game, and a world-awarely protagonist, Gi-hun, played by Lee Jung-jae, faces more pressure to make it to the end after barely surviving the previous final. But the certainty of the VIP in their dual roles as both hunters and a Greek cross of mustache twirling minions point to the primary flaw of the last season rather than deepen the capitalist star that initially made it a phenomenon. Scare Game tries to critique humanity, write large and delivers shallow thriller instead. The show is still concerned with money. Of course, the player gazes ruefully at the growing winnings potential before them. One character makes regular calculation about how much he will earn off his survivor, and another mulls whatever to become a loan shark. Ji-hoon has the sole winner of the 45.6 billion won prize in season. I multiple victors could split the money in season 2 by voting to end the games entirely following each round. But the show used to do more than just gesture at the competitors' financial burdens. In season I, many of the rounds were inherently unjust. One requiring players to cut shape out of sugar candy. For instance, put some of team immediately at a disadvantage based upon how complicated a shape they started with. The unfair allowed the show to underscore its theme of social inequality. How far a person starting with a difficult, pulling even, let alone coming out ahead, can be nearly impossible. Season 3 abandons such insight in favor of more superficial observation. The show's focusing now on how terrible people can be, whether they are one of the tournament or one of the constants. The player in particular face more punishing obstacle that they emphasize their selfness. A game of hide and seek, for example, is stacked against those who work alone, because escaping requires collecting keys from other participations to unlock a hidden door. A jump rope challenge involves a bridge with a gap, a test of physical proves that not everyone can pass. These competitions don't seem to contribute anything to the show's intimate dissection of economic anxiety and class struggle. They are plot contrivance when to intensify the proceeding. Even a major character who had seemed poised to seek redemption turns into a straightforward antagonist by the end. And then there is the matter of Scare Game's newest contender, whose presence embodies just how much the show has moved on from its original. For richer themes, Jun-hee, the pregnant Constance introduced in season 2, has her baby in the middle, of playing hide and seek. Later, after June, he dies during the jump rope game. The VIPs decided to replace her with a newborn. The twist is shocking enough, but the ensemble's reaction goes even further. Jay Biker, ludicrously or whatever, is very for a baby to compete for winning. By incorporating a character unable to do anything but cry to and go, and show only highlight its disinterest in more nuanced examination of human behavior, such as greed or activism. In on short, as a VIP's recap this development, the remaining players' bloodied faces surround the newborn in the center of a grid. Brady Bunch style, the unserious image convey how much the drama has become a parody of itself. The newborn's inclusions, who also renders Gi-hun's arc frustratingly inept. Jun-hee, before she dies, asks him to keep her child safe and divorce himself to his new purpose. Yet making Ji-hun the newborn's carrier only flattens him into an obvious avatar of goodness. Take the way he responds to Inho, the frontman, Gi-hun's rival and the primary organizer of the game. Inho disguised himself as a fellow competitor in season 2, gaining Gi-hun's trust before betraying him in the final. The season, after revealing his true identity to Gi-hun, encourages him to kill the other player in order to protect the baby, just as he is about to murder. Season 3 can still be compulsively watchable. Each set pieces remains impressively staged, and the intergoing subplots regarding the tournament's mysterious creation, including the ongoing search for the island on which the event takes place, pick up after being sidelined in season 2. The final leaves tantalizing thread that open the door for a possible new illustration of Scare Game, and many of the characters' relationships are affecting, even in their simplicity. A mother and son Jew learning to care for each other rather than the prize is emotionally affecting, and CJ Hoon's quest to exact revenge against the player who contributed to the rebellion's defeat last season briefly brings a fresh layer of tension. But in a television's landscape dominated by portraits of wealth, Scare Game in its first season was a rare success that recognized the cost of left. Those initial episodes captured the risk of cashing capital and exciting in a system that puts a price on every part of life. They served as a study of many slices of society in the process. Gi-hun himself proved a protagonist to root for when the show began, as a foolish gambling addict hoping to reconnect with his family, but who becomes obsessed with the game anyway by season 3. However, the player exists as little as but aftermath of good or evil. Its epilogue show how much the frontman came to sympathize with Gi-hun's perspective, that people are worth saving. Scare Game ends with one more surprise to highlight the tournament savagery. The story may have depended on the horror of just posing kids' game with life and death consequences to convey how being in adept can be living hell. But in the end, the show turned its insight into child's play too. If you have a threshold for spoiler, you might want to save this review for after you have watched Squid Game Season 3. There is an inaccuracy devastating episode early in the third and final season of Squid Game. For almost all of its hollering runtime, the Starry Night follows Constantine's darting around a multi-floor indoor maze of hallways and locked room. Its ceiling painted deep blue with yellow stars like an elementary school moral, playing a little game of hide and seek. Half of the players are given knives and told they will be eliminated if they don't kill at least one person from the other group, who get keys which open some of the door as a sort of head start. It's a simple setup, but it makes for superb television. More than ever before, we see characters making individual decisions to kill and die. Just about everyone comes out a murder, a hero, a corpse, or some combination of the three. This is the kind of episode that will surely thrill fans and inspire recappers to dissect the ethical and emotions dimension of each unthinkable choices. That, at least, was my reaction. Then I pressed play on the following episode and was embarrassed to see the VIPs. Oh, yes, they are back. Those monstrous and awkward masked elite who listlessly expect that the last few scare games on site, voicing some of the same observation that had occurred to me. Yikes. Welcome to the brutal last chapter of the scare game, which ends viewer that character and storylines we can't help but care about, then implicates us for treating a sadistic spectacle as entertainment. There is no understatement. The harm Netflix, due to scare game, by merchandising this dark straw of capitalism into consumerist oblivion, then delaying its conclusion with a second season that was mostly filler. But I am released to report that writer, director, and executive producer Hwang Jong-hyuk was wrested his creation from more clinical hands despite all the intrigues to which it's subjected. The show closes with its most unsparing season yet, an incident of societies where money trumps humanity that roots all of from complicity, especially our own. The groundwork for these final six episodes was led on a season 2. Final that ended just as the plot started moving could be 13 episodes that comprised the Snow Show second and third season have been compressed into a single 10 or even 8-part season. Easily and almost all of the cuts would have come from the first batch. Our hand dog hero scare game veteran Gi-hun, Lee Jung-jae had fomented evolution among some of the players, but that evolution failed, revealing that his ostensible comrade in arms, player 001, was actually the front man Lee Byung-hun, and leaving constellate the weight heavily on his conscience. The aftermath is a crushing return to dead games as usual. There is tutorials rendition of jump rope to be played, cash to be won, people to be eliminated, and soon enough VIPs to entertain. The VIPs are among the most divisible elements of Scare Game's first season, and it's not hard to see why. Suddenly, we had a new cast of live action cartoons in sparkly animal masks speaking a version of English that sounded pretty stilled to a long faced ear. They scenes threw the tone out of whack, adding an element to artifice to show whose emotionally realistic storytelling balanced cataphor fetched premise. None of the actors playing VIPs is in danger of winning an Emmy, and yet the VIPs are crucial. On one hand, more than even the frontman who oversees the awful spectacle, they are the show ultimate villains, the people who pay for the annual player are watching hundreds of high concept murder, yet they role as spectre and have commentaries on game styles that games that way. Two are watching and talking about also makes them a winner for the audiences in what could be interpreted as a response to scare games, emergence, and a global phenomenon, albeit one nurtured by reality competition spin-off and child-size player 45 Halloween costumes. The VIP's return in the final season emphasizes this uncomfortable identification between viewer and villain. If the VIPs were season first soar note, then in season 2, slow moving side plots set among the guards and the search party looking for scare game island provided less draining out, more extensive distractions from the main event. Detective Hwang Jones hosts procedural likewise to follow Gi-hun back to the island in hopes of shutting down the Apoharan competition and confronting his brother, the frontman dominated the first two episodes. Once the games began, Junho and his crew mostly drifted around lost. Meanwhile, a god, Kang No Park, would young daughters behind when she defected from North Korea, was putting herself at risk by interfering with her co-worker, organ harvesting side hustle. By the season 2 final, her purpose in the show remained opaque. Season 3 quickens the pace of both stories. J functions mostly as catalyst for the endgame. That endgame is nothing short of cutting. J we do get the occasional glimpse of hope. It's overshadowed by horror after horror, each revealing a new dimension of directors having diatribe against greed. This does not make season 3 a rehash of season 1, but a profound, frequently poignant, and yet trillion twist, packed depending of its theme. It is in particular an acknowledgement that individual heroes, burdened by conscience and a disproportionately low share of resources, can only do so much in the face of systematic evil. As one wise character laments to Gi-hun, bad people do bad things, but they blame others and go on to live in peace. Good people, on the other hand, beat themselves up about the smallest thing to pretend a scare game. Victory could be anything, but peric would be to accept a fairy tale written by the worst people on the planet. The only true victory would be a victory over will be millions of us watching. Importantly, from the sidelines, join the Gi-huns of the world. Scare Game Season 3 begins in familiar territory. The new episodes start right after the end of Scare Game Season 2. which knew Gi-hun Lee Jung-jae failed in his mission to kill the frontman Lee Byung-hun and stop the games. However, his participation is far from over. Being brought back into the dormitory, he continues to be a constant in the rest of the game. But after having failed to put an end to them with his rebellion, his mindset has shifted from where it once was. This change is a defining attribute of New How Season 3 plays out. As the series promised with its premise, the show offers more high stakes as the games continue, bringing with it plenty of dry scenarios and dark moments. But it also keeps up the momentum with its other important storyline. This includes Junho continuing his search for the island. Unaware Captain Park O is working with his brother. There is also more defined mission for No Eol. In the aftermath of the season 2 final, all these stories calls into Scare Game season 3, harboring some of the darkest development of the entire series. From the high tensions opening scene of episode 1, Scare Game season 3 establishes its 6 episodes run won't slow the pace of the game to come. It does not take long for the show to expertly navigate the aftermath of Gi-hun's failed rebellions, exploring how the show's memorable core characters are coping with their loss. There is a door depressing tone that emphasizes the hopelessness of the scenario after everything the group has lost. As season 3 continues, this tone evolves, but it's a first impression whose undertones never truly go away. This is coupled by the cast of Scare Game delivering stellar performance, jumping off their character's portrayal in season 2. Lee Jung-jae offers a compelling performance as Gi-hun, whose character's arc twists in very new direction after his personal loss. He expertly displays a unique side to the protagonist that emphasizes how the frontman's actions have affected his mindset. On the other side of the icon is Lee Byung-hun. His portrayal of the frontman in season 3 adds new layer to the character, offering surprising depth that scaffolds its season 2 storyline. This includes a harrowing jump rope games that challenges the player physically. Of course, Gi-hun's fellow constants continue their stories in various ways, while everyone gives striking performances. Kang is Sam Gen-ja and Park Sang-hoon. Kyunja are notable in Sailor, especially when the game starts back up again. But of all the constants, it's Joyori Junhei that shines the brightest. Season 3 rectifies any lack of development she had in season 2, with Jo delivering powerful performance as her struggle in the game grew more difficult. This includes one sequences early in the season where something memorable she does becomes central to her story ahead. As for the games themselves, the frontman's next preparation immediately telegraph just how much danger Gi-hun and the other constant are in. Their no challenges are even more dangerous than anything that's come before. This includes a harrowing jump rope game that challenges the player physically, continuing to increase the stakes of the game in the process, with an approach that makes even the simplest of momentum feels intense. Scare Game Season 3 utilized its characters and games to expertly deliver some of the most intense moments the show ever suffered. Alongside the games and player in Scare Game, Season 3 also delivers an interview through Gi-hun and a frontman's battle. This comes in the form of what's happening on the island and Junho search at the sea, with Captain Park's true intention being revealed to the audiences in Season 2. Every scene between him and the detective has a added layer of intensity. It's a clear he does not intend for Junho to find the island, resulting in a game of their own being played on the water. This character-driven section layered a larger conflict with more personal stakes for both parties. As for Gi-hun and the frontman's direct confrontation, there is a level of disconnect between the pair. Now the antagonist is no longer in the games, while there is still plenty of tension that comes from their different viewpoint on the world. That lack of personal interference does have something to be desired at first. Luckily, with the inclusion of new elements not seen in prior season, that issue is circumvented, offering a vehicle through which their ideological battle can continue. In fact, the only problem Scare Game Season 3 story has is the consequences of how the episodes were split up. While Season 3 graciously keeps the action going from the end of Season 2, a lack of real breathing room makes it premiere feel more like Season 2, Episode 8. Given the 6-month break between episodes and the lack of re-establishment and takes place, there is a slight emotional disconnect that happens when the snow begins. While this is rectified as possible episodes play out, there are some events early on that don't hit as hard because of its approach. Luckily, the show manages to draw from just how engaging its darker turns into the season to balance out the weight with hard-hitting twists and turns. There is much about season 3 that's difficult to watch unfold, but the show manages to justify even the most emotionally events with its broader storyline. Editing the show thus feels like a purposeful, justifiable action that builds up its hardship. This makes every character's story strong in how they are approached, while still keeping Gi-hun and the frontman in the center of it all. With high-octane games and a compelling story that picks up where Season 2 left off, Scare Game Season 3 is a powerful stand-up to the popular Netflix thriller. The season maintains focus on its core themes and characters, offering a final stretch and just as engaging as it is Omnian. Thanks to its unflinching approach to the difficulty of the final episodes, the show creates effective final episodes whose influence will ego long after its closing minutes. There are some series that work as well as one, and those does it hard to imagine what could possibly be gained creatively from pressing onward with the second reason. Sometimes those seemingly unnecessary renewal nevertheless yield pleasant surprises. Barry got only darker and wider. As it went on, White Lord successfully expanded itself into a globe-trotting anthology. Other times, however, that initial skepticism proves justified. The second round of Netflix South Korean sleeper hit Scare Game was a shooting star John from the first, rehashing most of the same themes and story beats at a slower pace with fewer insight. But it also delivered only half a season worth of plot, planting bombs to be detonated later on, then cutting off just as things got truly intense. A reasonable person might have hoped a third season could provide enough payoff to make it list some of those stumbles worthwhile. Alas, it brings me no player to report that the third and thankfully last of Scare game seasons only confirmed that we, like Gi-hun, should have left that crushed a land behind for good after his first victory. Season 3 picks up in the immediate aftermath of Season 2 as the last few rebels from Gi-hun's violent uprising are put down and their bodies cleaned up. Gi-hun himself is not among the dead. That fact gives him no relief. The man who returned to the dorms is once so flattered by grief and guilt that he snapped to life only to scream at the guards to just kill him already. They don't focus, of course, nor are the surviving Constantines moved to reconsider his earlier place to choose to quit. So the game and Scare Game proceed as usual, hurtling Constantines through deadly high stakes version of hide and seek, jump rope, and something the organization terms Sky Scare Game, which is essentially a shoving match dubbed the singly high column. But the thrill is gone. Even if the VIPs yes, they are back and they're bizarrely stilled line reading along with them. Try to convince us otherwise. The watching is more exciting than the actual games. One dealer declares as if responding to viewer complaints that the watching book too much time in season 2. This just keeping getting more and more interesting. And they announced late in this season. Like we might start to believe them if they just say it's loudly enough. It does not work. While creator Hwang Dong still has a few more nasty tricks up his sleeve, including one final twist of the knife so cruel. I gasped when I realized what was happening. Its latest run is too short on surprise and emotion, and too long on misery and violence. Its main thematic target is once again the unjustness of our modern capitalistic system, this time with a specific and sometimes devastatingly showed eye toward how the pretense of democracy can paper our unspeakable cruelty in accordance with your free and democratic vote. The next game will resume tomorrow. The participants are informed after each vote to keep playing, as if there could be anything free about such a choice being made in a system rigged by distant elites and enforced by faceless. In one of the season's most darkly hilarious moments, a player apologetically informs another that the others have voted to sacrifice him. Please forgive me, but we are going to need you die. He pleads, invoking a majority rule in a futile attempt to erase his own complicity and immense desire to live. But season days an awfully long way to go for those occasional bites of wisdom, and a largely unpleasant one peasants. Squid Game has never been a nice show by one standard. Early on, however, its grimness was tempered by a deep company for the people trapped in this mess, and its occasional flickers of hope that compensation and connection might arise even under the harshest of climate. Part of what made that initial outgoing so fascinatingly questing was the tensions between how bad we felt for the characters suffering and how entertaining it was to watch. Now it's gloom and doom all the way. John, the show is still great at coming up with new and creative ways to torture its character. One twist involving a baby is as viscerally upsetting as it seems logistically impossible, but sees less so at digging into their humanity, and without the latter, the farmers start to feel like misery for misery's sake. If the new player introduced in season 2 felt disappointingly thin, season 3 makes no attempt to flash them out any further. It's miscalculation that limits our investment, not just and clearly obvious figures like sadistic Namkyo or greedy Jung-jae Song Yong-jang, but also in sympathetic souls like trans soldier and extinguished Motor June. Aside from Gi-hun, now a strong silent trap with no remaining trace of his gold graciousness. The one thing all of them have in common is that they seem more like pieces being pushed around a chessboard than complicated human beings with agency and intertwine. In use of characters and relationship work, Scare Game Season 3 offered heaps and heaps of plot. But while there are a few bright spots, chief among them the bites of levity, offer best loved, slightly goofy, occasionally clever, and generally lovable. Lone Shark, Woo Seok, Johon Sok. The pace is lumbering, painstaking, effort by God, no evil. Park Yu Young, to save a player, the no from the outside. The interminable quest by ex-cop John to find the island, and the frequent cuts back to the front man in his fancy chair, and the VIPs in their luxury suits only drag the proceedings in the arena out further, while adding little in the way of new information, emotional impact, or thematic depth. By the time scare by the time Scare Game finally crosses over the finish line, there is no sense of triumph you might gel from completing already good story. Only of relief that this entire grueling experience is finally over. The series has one last jolt to offer and it's about one that could just be a fun little bow to tie the whole thing together, or the start of yet another new spin-off chapter. For its sake and our own, let's hope it's the former. The kindest thing to offer his own universe now might be a mercy killing. Scare Game Season 3 begins in familiar territory. The new episodes start right after the end of Scare Game Season 2. We saw Gi-hun's Lee Jung fail in his mission to kill the frontman and stop the games. However, his participation is far from over being brought back into the dormitory. He continues to be a constant in the rest of the games, but after having failed to put an end to them with his rebellion, his mindset has shifted from where it once was. This change is defining attribute of how season 3 plays out. As the series promised with its promises, the show offers more high stakes as the games continue bringing with its plenty of dire scenarios and dark momentum. But it also keeps up the momentum with his other important storyline. This includes John Ho, continuing his search for the island. Unaware captain is working with his brother. There is also more defined mission for No Pork in the aftermath of the season 2 final. All these stories into Scare Game season 3. From the high tension opening scene of episode 1, Scare Game season 3 establishes its 6 episodes run won't show the pace of the games to come. It does not take long for the show to expertly navigate the aftermath of Gi-hun's failed rebellion, exploring how the show's memorable core characters are coping with their loss. There is a dual, depressing tone that emphasizes the hopelessness of the scenario after everything the group has lost. As season 3 continues, this tone evolves, but it's a first impression whose undertones never truly go away. This is coupled by the cast of Scare Game delivering stellar performances, jumping off their characters' portrayals in season 2. Lee Jung-jae offers a compelling performance as Gi-hun, whose character's act twist in a very new direction after his personal loss. He expertly displays a unique side to the protagonist that emphasizes how the frontman's actions have affected his mindset. On the other side of the coin is Lee Byung-hun. His portrayal of the frontman in season 3 adds new layer to the character, offering surprising depth to the scaffolds of his season 2 storyline. Of course, Gi-hun's fellow constants continue their stories in various ways, while everyone gives striking performances. Kang A-shim's Gyomja and Park Seung-hoon's Hyunja, especially when the games start back up again. But of all the constants, it's June here that shines our brightest. Season 3 rectifies any lack of development she had in season 2, with Joe delivering powerful performance as Sky's struggle in the game grew more difficult. This includes one sequences early in the season where something memorable she does becomes central to her story ahead. As for the games themselves, the frontman's next preparation immediately telegraphed just how much danger Gi-hun and the other constants are in. Their new challenges are even more dangerous than anything that's come before. This includes harrowing jump rope game that challenges the players physically, continuing to increase the stake of the game in the process, with an approach that makes even the simplest of moments feel intense. Scare Game Season 3 utilizes its characters and games to expertly deliver some of the most intense moments the show ever offered. Alongside the games and player in Scare Game, Season 3 also delivers its interview through Gi-hun and a frontman's battle. This comes in the form of what's happening on the island and the John who search at sea, with Captain Park's true intents being revealed to the audiences in Season 2. Every scene between him and the detective has an added layer of intensity. It's clear he does not intend for Junho to find the island, resulting in a game of their own being played on the water. This character-driven section layered the larger conflict with more personal stakes for both parties. As for Gi-hun and the frontman's direct confrontation, there is a level of disconnect between the pair now the antagonist is no longer in the game, while there is still plenty of tension that comes from their different viewpoint on the world. That lack of personal interference does have something to be desired at first. Luckily, with the inclusion of new elements not seen in previous season, that issue is circumvented, offering a vehicle through which their ideological battle can continue. In fact, The only problem Scare Game Season 3 story has is a consequence of how the episodes were split up. While Season 3 garrulously keeps the action going from the one end of Season 2, a lack of real waiting room makes its premiere feel more like Season 2, Episode 8, given the 6 month breaks between episodes and a lack of free establishment that takes place. There is a slight emotional disconnect that happens when the show begins. While this is rectified as episodes play out, there are some events early on that don't hit as hard because of its approach. Luckily, the show manages to draw from just as engaging its darker turns out this season to balance out the weight with hard hitting twist and turn. There is much about season 3 that's difficult to watch unfold, but the show manages to justify even the most emotionally events with its broader storyline. Everything the show does feels like a purposeful, justifiable action that builds up stop in hardship. This makes every character's story strong in how they are approached, while still keeping Gi-hun and the frontman in the center of it all. With high octane games and a compelling story that picks up where season 2 left off. Scare Game Season 3 is a powerful send-off to the popular Netflix thriller. The season maintains focus on its core themes and characters, offering a final stretch that's just as engaging as it is ominous. Thanks to its unflinching approach to the difficulty of the final episodes, the show creates offensive final episodes whose influence of ego long after its closing minutes. Squid Game Season 3 begins in familiar territory.